Hello?
Hi, Burton. Richard,
Yes.
that's how you say your name.
That's
How are
that's
you?
I'm good. Sorry, I had an old man moment. Didn't know how to
Oh,
click join, but I'm in now.
that's okay. I mean, social audio is a little different. It's not like I'm going to be merging over to a podcast soon. But so that'll be a little different, like talking over Zoom or whatever.
Right.
This is just, social audio. And I just wanted to have a quick discussion on, I just keep um hearing about AAU. And I wanted to learn more. I wanted to ask some questions and learn more about AAU culture and how is it. I was doing some research, and that's where this room has come from. So I'm excited. Jason PK, is also on stage. He has children who participated in AAU. We have some coaches coming through that also um, coached in AAU or played. So I'm excited about getting multiple views on AAU from different slants. So I'm excited about this discussion. So people are coming in close to on time. So I think what I'm going to do, it looks like, hey Jay down there, JF is up here. Mess has joined us, and we have Jay from BK, and Burton is here. So I'm just going to open up actually and say, welcome to the Rewind Pod, where we discuss all things NBA, sports, really sports culture, but I spend time on the NBA, some things on the NFL, and I'll be branching out to other sports soon. Tonight, we are going to discuss AAU. I began getting, I've been hearing about AAU for years, and I keep hearing pros and cons of AAU and more cons lately. So I wanted to have a discussion with people that participated in AAU as a parent, as a player, as a coach, or in any way. What is AAU culture? Where does that come from? How is it formed? What is the history of AAU? What is your history with AAU? And we'll see where the conversation takes us. My plan is to also eventually discuss its influences on the NBA and NBA culture that we have today. But we're going to start with looking at AAU culture on its own, and we're going to start there. So we have on stage, we have JF. JF, you want to introduce yourself and why you're on stage?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is JF. Basically, I can relate to this subject a lot. I'm actually a coach and I deal with kids, but I coach football. But AAU, I was in AAU on a B team, so I have an experience with that, and I understand the ins and outs of AAU. And I think the major problem with AAU that you're explaining and everybody else is trying to explain is that this is I guess you can
Before
say,
we
a
go
type
there,
of.
JF, before we go
Huh?
into the problems, I just want to get everybody to introduce
Oh yeah,
themselves
yeah,
and
yeah.
their relation
So
to AAU first, and
got
I'll
you.
come back and we'll circle back. Jay,
Yeah, so I'm just very involved with the kids. So like I have like a understanding of what a child needs compared to what an adult wants. So I'm here for that.
cool. Jay from BK, introduce yourself and what brought you to the stage with regarding AAU.
Good evening, everybody. Brought me to the stage is because my sons play AAU ball right now, and
And their
they're in
ages, Jay?
8 and 10, and they play 8U and 10U, and they're involved in this cesspool of shameless coaches who got a 12-year old playing 10U. So I came to speak and learn at the same time. But my sons, they play. Uh, They travel for basketball camps throughout the United States, and they play AAU in Jersey, Long Island, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, wherever they have games.
Thank you, Mess. Um, thank you for joining the stage. And what brings you to this discussion on AAU?
Hey Malika, how you
How are
doing?
you?
Um, I'm good. So A very long time ago, I played AAU. My first team I actually played for was Gauchos. Um, and so I've had many friends who played on AAU teams, friends who coach it. My niece is playing AAU now as well. So, very knowledgeable about this topic and opinionated too.
Cool. Thank you. And Burton has also joined us. And Burton, you sent me some of your background, but why don't you explain your background, like what you want to share yourself and why
Yep.
you're in this discussion on AAU
Yeah.
culture?
Hi, everyone. My name's Burton. I've been working in professional sports for over 20 years, including working with AAU programs when I worked at Rise Magazine, working closely with the sneaker companies as they were targeting grassroots. And I helped launch an All American game called Elite 24 in 2006. And one of the goals, it's no longer a goal for that game, but one of the goals was to move away from sort of the sneaker wars AAU culture when we launched it. So I have some insight on the sort of the professional side of the climate in AAU.
Thank you. So I appreciate everyone's slant. Coach Goodman, if you wanted to come to the stage on your perspective at AAU, let me know. But thanks everyone for being here. So let's start off with everyone's coming from different slants. And one of the things I shared some quotes tonight, and I'll put them up on a jumbotron from some NBA coaches and former and Kobe on their perspective of AAU and how they're not taught how to play team ball, according to Steve Kerr and some other things he said. Kobe just outright, said it's horrible because kids don't learn the fundamentals. So I wanted to go around and if you can name a top issue with AAU, what would you say that was? And I wanted from each of your individual perspectives on AAU. We could start with JF and work our way to Burton. So go ahead, JF.
Yeah, just to keep it quick, Malika, I think the biggest issue is the adults. I don't think they have true intentions. And I'm not speaking of all of them. I'm just speaking
You mean,
just
and when you
about
say
some of them.
adults, do you mean parents or coaches? So I'm going to make sure I
No,
understand the slant.
no, that's a sticky situation because it can be either. You get what I'm saying? Like it can definitely be on both sides of the fence, and that's what I'm saying. A lot of some people just live in a facade world when they're grown ass adults, and they got to understand that it's better off for the children to develop the right way instead of just trying to microwave the situation. And somebody mentioned the sneaker wars in AAU, and literally, that's if you understand that, it's just a big money grab at the end of the day. Same thing like 7-on-7 for football. It's not actual basketball. You don't teach them the actual stuff. It's just to showcase their talents, and that's what AAU is to me, just to showcase your talents. But I don't think they teach that much because if they did, they would be developing players instead of just trying to grab big names and form a superstar team. And I think that just hurts the mentality for the kids because the kids grow up thinking something different when the NBA and NFL are two different things in the 7-on-7 and AAU. Like Kobe just said, they're not being properly developed, and you can see that in somebody like Markel Fultz, highly recruited high school player coming out into Washington from AAU ball, and he just doesn't amount to anything. Or you could be a Julian Newman, who you feel me, like you just are too fancy, and you're not. How can I say you're not fundamentally sound, and it does leave a negative effect on a lot of players. And I don't know if we are missing out on some players that we should be seeing in the NBA that we don't just because of the development of AAU. So that is my biggest issue is like what are the adults really doing with the kids nowadays, and what are their true intentions?
Great. Jay, from your perspective as a parent, what is wrong with AAU from your perspective as a parent?
I too will echo the adult uh, coaches and some of the parents, but I'll put it more on coaches because they're supposed to be the leaders, developing the young talent to the older talent, and they'll they're shameful. Like you know a child is too old to play certain ages, and you'll still look. you'll still have your child play against someone who's just attempting to get better. Put your child in the age that they belong. If they're not able to level up, then that's on them. But it's a lot of coaches who skirt rules, and there is disgusting behavior. Also, some parents really be out of pocket with how it's not about the children. It's about them and their egos and trying to live through their children. So they get really out of hand at some of these tournaments and have to be brought back down to earth. And they're not setting good examples for their children in terms of how to be young men, and how to grow up and really harness emotion and grow properly.
Thank you. T'Challa, we'll come to you last. We'll get to you. Mess, from your perspective as a former player and former, you've been playing hoop for how long? Not to date yourself, right? But like from your perspective on, how you as a player and how grow, in terms of how you mature in AAU from age to age. What did you observe? What was wrong with it when you played?
So when I played, I actually think it was actually kind of perfect, right? So, like I said, my first experience was with the Gauchos. When I first learned how to play basketball, they had me at Gauchos gym by myself doing drills. I didn't even get to play with the team until I got to the point where they felt I was good enough to play with the team. And then when I got to that point, I wasn't hardly getting any playing time because I hadn't earned the playing time. So I came from a time when it was serious, and the Gauchos, Riverside, like those are serious programs. I think what's changed though has been the money, right? So there's so much money that's in AAU now, whether it be all these different places, all these different tournaments that pop up every week. If sneaker companies, funding teams, parents funding teams, whoever funding teams, there's just so much money that it's blurred the lines. It's and also the advent of social media, right? So it's no longer like let's try to help these kids find an
Mess, you're
outlet to learn
breaking
how to
up
play
pretty
the game.
bad. We can barely hear you.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna go outside real quick. Um, yeah, it's less about trying to learn how to play the game and more about how can we exploit the kids at this point.
If he's done, Burn, I think you can go ahead and answer that question if you want.
Yeah, I would say.
There I go.
Hello.
Yeah, I think we're losing you, Malika.
Oh, I would say my perspective. I don't know if it's the biggest problem. Maybe it is, and I have some thoughts about the money in the game, but I would sort of piggyback off of the quote that Malika posted, that Steve Kerr said. Like, there isn't a lot of opportunity to learn how to be a part of a team and grow with a team. It feels very all star. It feels like flying in kids. It feels very like showcase your talent. Very like, I'm going to date myself. Very ABCD camp back in the day, where it's just like, yo, if you could just cross over OJ Mayo, you can get a scholarship, versus try to play a high pick and roll and get a basket or get a guy an open shot. So I think like the fundamentals and the team game are being compromised. And I think Kobe's right. Like, Kobe spent so much time learning how to develop the fundamentals, not just when he got to the league and was fully developed as an adult, but as a kid. He played on lower hoops and smaller balls so he could get the fundamentals right. And I think in AAU, they don't do that as much. And I think that hurts the American game. Not that this is about the American game, but you see guys like Luca and Joker who have just the fundamentals down because that's what they learned. So I think that would be one of my biggest sticking points with AAU as a
Thank you.
basketball nerd.
Thank you, Burton. I missed most of that because my phone started to misbehave and kick me out of my own space. So, but thank you. I'll listen back to what you what you added. T'Challa, you can put your phone down. You can start off by talking about what brought you to the stage to discuss AAU, your experience with AAU, and then our question is, what was your what was your experience at AAU that wasn't positive? Like, what was wrong with AAU when you worked with it?
Yes, and for sure, Malika. I've been on both sides of the angle. I've been a coach on AAU for quite a amount of years. I've been a parent in AAU, and when I began with AAU, it was because my son was playing, and I can remember one of the very first tournaments he played in. Afterwards, someone walked up to me. He's only at the time maybe 6, and someone said to me, "Where are you zoned for high school at?" And I told him, "There's like, if we go ahead and work together, we could get the address changed, and he can go to a better program at a better school." So there's a lot of sharks that's out in the water at an early time that's looking at these 16 kids. And going back to the part that Matt was saying, it's been really corrupted by the sneaker companies that have, we're seeing runners who are coming behind to go ahead and pump money to these coaches to get information on players and plus all that. But to be honest, this is the same thing that at the high schools have been doing, and especially doing, I mean, doing the last past say, 10 years. I know personally high schools where a parent has walked up to a coach and said, "We'll go ahead and transfer here, but we need a paper bag with $10,000 on say Monday because our cars broke down." So, you know, anytime you have that type of level of where money is the main thing, you you're going to have some form of corruption, and then the kids are not the focal point and the teachings of the game is not the focal point. You can go to any AAU tournament and you see hundreds of kids playing inside of one weekend, and then that same kid the very following week is playing on on another team, and you're like, wait a minute, how's that possible? It's because they go where the same money's at. I think coaches are able to, be able to give them something, or be able to give their parents something, especially if they're good. And again, if you look at the environment of AAU, teaching is not there because coaches themselves, some of them, not all of them, don't have any sort of qualification. The refereeing is so bad that because there's so many games a day, they call nothing at all. So it becomes a hack fest where kids are trapping and grabbing and everything that they can't do in a real game, and it takes so long. And as you see it, when the season starts in high school, it takes so long for the kid to break the bad habit that he learned in the summertime as he plays in the regular season of a high school game because he can't do that there. You know, um, so it's all that, and also to the point I think that Jay made is the funny thing is when you do Pop Warner football, any Warner football, they check ID and they check age. Inside of AAU basketball, they go by grade. So if I've been held back or I've been reclassified several times, I could be a 16-year-old and I'm playing against an eighth grader. And so, of course, there's going to be a disadvantage between someone who's 16 and someone who's just saying turned 12 and 13. That's a big time difference, even though it's only 3 years.
Yeah,
Um,
Jay mentioned, Jay from BK mentioned like his kids playing against older kids. So when they say tournaments 14 and under, like the 14 and under classification or something, when you see that, it doesn't necessarily mean that. They mean the grades in that time. I'm just trying to understand.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. It does not necessarily mean that the kids are 14 and I mean, they give that premise, but the first thing they look at, and also because they're not checking IDs and any of that, anybody can just go ahead and sign up and say, I'm so and so. And now they do go ahead and check them in the big tournaments. Now, the very big tournaments, like if you have Adidas, shootout, yeah, that's, I mean, totally different. But just a average weekend tournament, no one's checking age, no one's checking IDs or anything like that. But when they say 14 and under, that's them saying 14 and under, but you could be 14 and playing under who? Under 12? Under
That's a
11?
good point.
So,
That's a good point. Can we go to talking about the sneaker culture of AU versus the those non sneaker culture, like the difference between the two. Like with the sneaker culture, money grab, publicity, or whatever you can get from that. type of tournament versus the AAU that may be more focused on development? Like, is there a clear separation between the two? And if so, what is the clear distinction between both programs? Anybody can jump in here.
Hey Malika, before you get that, I just wanted to make one clarification. So when kids play on AAU teams, you have to submit your birth certificate. So the coach and the team has it on file, right? So at any given point, like if they're asked, they are to produce it. So they've cracked down a lot on that side of it. But the difference, the thing now is kids are reclassifying. So if a kid should be in 8th grade, they're reclassifying to 7th grade, and so that year of development, like, is an advantage because you're older. You should be playing with kids that are in 8th grade and older. Instead, you're playing with kids that are younger, and so that's where you're getting a lot of the advantage because of that classification of from a school perspective. So I just wanted to make
I
that
have
point.
I have a question for anybody that's involved in AAU. I know there you have to present the birth certificate, but are there player cards as well where this shows the player's picture, his date of birth to match the birth certificate? Because I know sometimes they will change the picture to go ahead and match a birth certificate. So I was wondering if AAU is requiring player
Now,
cards.
to the point that Miss made on that is that, I'm sorry, Miss, I mean, did you want to answer that? I know that they are requiring in the big tournaments, but in the average weekend tournaments, if you're just in a local AAU tournament, they're not checking it. To the point that Miss just made, when you go ahead and reclassify, um, yeah, it's anything goes basically. So yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the same level of the same tournament that you're playing in, on how in depth they are. But most local tournaments, there are so many of them, they're not even trying to go ahead and check any information to identify.
Go ahead, Jay from BK.
Jason BK, go ahead. I did it
I
again,
was
but go ahead,
I
Jason
was gonna
BK.
say the y'all just threw me off when saying they require birth certificates. I've never produced my son's birth certificate. I'm just an honorable person, so I'm not gonna let my when I see my son play 8U, I'm not gonna let my 10-year-old play against these 8-year-olds, and I don't care if they have 9-year-olds. He's substantially better than them. Like I've never been asked to produce a birth certificate. Some people just do the right thing, and they play in tournaments all over the place. But I've never been asked to produce a birth certificate on either of the AAU teams that they've played on.
So not consistent practices that we're seeing. Okay. Let's talk about the sneaker circuit of AAU versus the non-sneaker circuit. What are the biggest differences? Okay, on the sneaker circuit, obviously money grab. More money is involved there, more exposure. So let's talk about the differences between those two cans for AAU and how that works. And anybody can jump in here.
Well, one of the things about the sneaker companies, if you are one of those players that they seem to think has a potential future, is that they want to try to hang on to you as early as possible. Whether or not that you're Zion Williamson or you're Seventh Woods. I mean, I can remember that my son played against Seven Woods when he tried out for the Nike team, and he came back and he said to me, "There's this kid. His name is Seventh Woods, and he just dunked on everybody." At that point in time, though he was only going into the 8th grade, everybody knew where he was going. He ended up being in North Carolina, but he was paved. Is that the road was kind of made a little bit easier, and that's what the sneaker companies actually do. Is that they pave the road to make it easier for you to be able to get to that point.
Well, I just want to say, I think there's, for my personal experience, AAU teams, they need sponsorships to go ahead and travel and do all these things. So when it comes down to the sneakers, depending on what sneakers your team wears, is how you attract the recruits. So for instance, when I was in AAU, Steve Blake was sponsoring our team with and one. And I ain't saying we were attracting some of them big all stars, but it was a type of team where you were able to develop, and we weren't worried about the shoes. We were just worried that we had some, we had something to wear. And I think the biggest issue now is that kids are now all worried about what they're wearing and what's on their feet because of social media and stuff like that. And I think that's where the adults they find a little loophole how to cater to these kids and try to make a little money grab, because they can go ahead and find somebody sponsored. But the bigger that their team's name is the more sponsors that are going to come and give them and donate their money because they already have the right sponsorships from sneakers or whatnot, and then they already have the kids that are going to come play. So it's nothing but just like a product that's out there. Who wants to come sponsor us? You know what I'm saying? So you have to ask yourself, what is the money really going towards? Is it going towards travel for these kids? Is it really being put towards these kids? But there's so much money. With just a sneaker deal, you can sponsor a whole team in traveling, especially if you got somebody like a Steve Blake, who probably wasn't even the richest NBA basketball player, but he helped us out a lot. But this is what I'm saying. It's all a rotating wheel that just keeps on happening. So you're going to see teams with the Zion Williamsons and everybody he had on his team, you know what I'm saying, play together. And like the Ben Simmons and whoever he had on his AAU team play together. So that's exactly what you're going to see. Just more and more sponsorships so more people can fill their pockets.
Anybody else want to jump in here on this one? One of the reasons I asked this is because Mark Edwards, who is a NBA trainer or development coach, he basically had an opinion. I was trying to get him to come in here to explain. There's AAU and then there's the shoe circuit, and they're totally different. And I'm
Yeah,
like, well, how are they different? Of course, that brings the question, how are they different? So please,
well, Malika,
anybody can jump
well,
in.
Malika, as far as one way that's very different is that
T'Challa, hold on for a second. Coach G, you came on speaker. Is there anything you wanted to get in and say here?
Yeah, real quick. So, there's a huge difference in AAU and travel ball. Um, AAU sanction events is by the organization AAU, and they do age-based events. So, um, when you were talking about the birth certificates and everything like that, those AAU sanction events require birth certificates, as well as player cards. What we've mostly been talking about is travel ball, though. So it's not associated with the actual organization AAU. It's just summer ball. So when you start talking about the independent teams, when you talk about EYBL, 3SSB, Under Armour, all of those are people call it AAU, but it actually isn't AAU. It's something completely different. So there's like different levels of travel ball. Before the money came involved with the different shoe companies and whatnot, AAU, everyone played that. Everyone wanted to go to nationals, get down to Orlando. Once the Nike came in and Adidas came in, it started branching out to different levels, basically. So I coach with Team Wall. We're fully sponsored by John Wall. We were on the Adidas circuit up until 2020 when he got bought out of his contract there, and now we're on the independent circuit. So I could talk to you about AAU, and then I could talk to you about independent, and then I could talk to you about the different circuits. Just kind of where we want to go with it. But there's complete differences in all three of those, as far as the requirements to play on those teams, what those teams are looking for, and then even just the dynamics of the team. As far as I've heard some guys talk about development, how guys are just getting flown in for the weekend and everything. That is 100% accurate with some of these top teams, and that's because it's a money thing. Nike is basically sponsoring those teams to say, hey, your job is to provide the best players in the country and put them on our platform, kind of thing. So it's a little different. We can deep dive in, but I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that when you say AAU, that's actually an organization that does actually have rules and regulations that most of the other travel ball associations don't have.
I appreciate that, Coach. T'Challa, you wanted to get in here? You were about to say
no,
something?
Dad, I was going to say some of what he just said. He seemed perfectly said it. Excellent. Like I said, they all seem different levels. And one thing about the sneaker side, though, you get the better coaching, you get the better training. When you are sponsored by a shoe company, not just the fancy uniforms, but it's just everything else. But if you're just on a local tournament, like he's saying, just he's seen travel ball. I think that's what most people see because it's everywhere. It's very common, and there are so many kids who are playing it um, that you have so many. You think different people who are ill-equipped to be, I thought, responsible for your kid, because I call it being responsible for the kid also, because you have to be a good role model, and a lot of these people who are coaches on the AE level should not be anywhere near kids. But I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. So there's a big distinction between the two. So of course the money grab is there for the shoe circuit, but when I'm thinking about those people on the shoe circuit over the summer, it was mentioned earlier, like, but those kids transitioning from the shoe circuit and then transitioning to regular high school ball, how does that work? Like, how does that transition? Have you guys saw examples of kids like floundering with, switching between playing the AAU type ball and playing the organized ball in high school? And anybody can jump in here.
So a lot of times the coaches that coach them in AAU are their high school coaches. So it's a constant continuation of the program of that coaching, right? Where they get. So that's a benefit, right? Like you get in that, it's consistent. Sometimes these kids don't qualify for high school, right? And that also comes in with the reclassification. Because they may not have their grades, so they got to transfer out to another school. And then when they go to the other school, their grades aren't as good, so then they got to reclassify grades down as well. Um, it's it's I'd say it's challenging, but these kids now they play so many games and they're used to hearing so many
I heard it
different
could be as many
voices.
as four a day, so you could have a kid playing 4 games a day. That's
Yeah, yeah, it's like
yeah.
for a weekend, weekend tournament. But like they're playing so many games that they get to the point where they they're better at it as in a quote unquote professional manner than say we were, because we weren't playing four, we were playing maybe one and two. So I think their mentality and mindset, because they've been conditioned to play so many games at such a young age, that when they transition back to high school, it gets even slower because you're only practicing once and you playing again. And that's when you're supposed to like really just hone in and be able to like work and get better at your game. And then when you play AU, if there's a tournament on the weekend or like, there's a holiday tournament, a lot of times it's for the schools. They're playing all the way through to February. So like March, if you're lucky. So now April through the summertime, you're AAU, and then that's when it ramps back up.
Now another thing with AAU that pops up is that I heard discussed is the colleges that also, like, some of the AAU tournaments from what I was reading also could cater to some of the colleges. And so how does, like, in terms of timing and seeing some of the top talent, especially if they're upperclassmen. So when it comes to, and Burton, maybe you could speak to this part, or anyone else who had any interactions with that work, like getting college coaches coming out to some of the AAU tournaments over the summer. So not only do you have the sneaker culture versus AAU organization sponsored opportunities, but you also have coaches coming out, colleges coming out, seeing some of these players. So can anyone speak to that? JF, I'm about to put you down, put you down, and then bring you back up.
Tim, yeah, Malika, I just want to add on to one thing. Yeah, is that the coaches have a certain time frame that they can watch players from. It is that they can't be in the gym at like all summer long. There's a certain time frame and date. But Mess just said about players playing 4 games in a day, like you said, you've heard. One of the problems of the AAU culture, or the travel, ball culture, is that the players don't have a chance to recover, and it's been a very large conversation about, is that why we see so many injuries to players at a younger age nowadays, where it seems that they have so much mileage of that's on their body, that they get more prone to like soft tissue injuries in their early 20s. So that part of the game is still being debated which it should be, because we all know that the body needs time to recover. And if you don't do that, which a lot of these programs do not, then you get a player or a say, kid that is just basically burning himself out.
Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in on this? Go ahead, Coach.
Oh, so with the college coaches for Division One being in the building and whatnot, we have what's called live periods. You have specific live periods in the spring and also in the summer. And that's when the Division One coaches can actually be in the building. They can communicate with the players and the coaches and whatnot in person at these events. Um, those events are a little more structured just because of kind of who's in the building kind of thing, and you can only play a certain amount of games per day in those events. So you can only play 2 games a day in those events. You can only play a certain amount of games in that entire live period. But it's the problem as a whole with just basketball right now is the adults and the money side of it. And so um, like tomorrow, if I wanted to, I could leave the team I'm with and start my own team, and there's nothing that's really required for me to do but get insurance on the team, you know? And so you have so many coaches, I know a couple of people have said it already, that aren't necessarily qualified. Like there's no qualification, you know, for live events, you have to be gold certified, but that's watching a couple of videos and taking a test at the end and passing the background check. You know, there's no actual certification real process for it versus high school basketball where you actually have to go through a process of getting hired for the job and whatnot. So that's one of the issues I see. It's so oversaturated right now, and so when a kid isn't happy where he's at, or his parent isn't happy because my son should be playing point guard, even though he can't dribble with his left hand. I'm just going to go start my own team, and again, there's nothing out there that stops that from happening. I'm in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and North Carolina is big on basketball. And I did some research the year before COVID, and we had 108 teams in our city alone, 108 travel
Wow.
teams. And it's like, okay, well, what is the goal of these teams? Are we really trying to get these kids better? Is it, hey, I want to be in the picture holding up the trophy with the kids? Is it I want my kid to shine? That's when it boils down to, unfortunately, the adults right now are controlling a lot that they aren't really focused on the kids. Um, and it's not about the development of basketball anymore. It's about, what video can I post on Instagram or Twitter, or, what can I do this? What kind of shoe deal can I get? What can I get with this? And that's kind of my personal opinion why the gap between American basketball and European basketball has not only closed, but in some ways, European basketball players are showing you that they're better because they're better developed at a younger age.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about like, oh God, there's an echo. Burton, can you unmute? I'll come right to you in a minute. I'm thinking about um NIL. And when NIL was introduced, it was like all this about, like college. It was like noise that college basketball is ruined, like the amateurism is taken away. But when you look at it, you have these kids get money for, since they were back before they even left high school. Like, so that's, like that's not corrupting it. This was money was always in basketball from when they were very young. I'm gonna go to Jo and then Mess.
What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Um, I had heard some interesting stuff in here, and I think Coach G spread a lot of light, and he seems really knowledgeable. I started a traveling team with one of my childhood friends because his son wanted to play traveling ball, and we live like kind of in between Cleveland and Columbus, so it was kind of difficult for him to be able to get his son to Columbus to play on these bigger traveling teams. So we kind of started up our own team and kind of just kind of worked with the talent that we had around us. And I think Coach G kind of spoke to it. There's different levels. AAU is the top level. I think uh, when we played, we were in a circuit called OYB, Ohio Youth Basketball. Um, and the differences in between the levels, and I think Coach kind of touched on this. You have to carry a certain amount of insurance, I believe, when you do play AAU, or a certain amount, dollar wise, of insurance when you have an AAU team. So we kind of stayed away from that. But the reason why I popped in is because I heard some people at the beginning of the discussion when I popped in, they were kind of talking about player development, and with us being a smaller team from kids from a smaller area, like we didn't have kids from all around Ohio. We had kids from I'd say maybe like a 15-20 mile range, not far, but we really had to work with and develop those kids because we weren't having the kids from all around and having our choice of whoever we wanted on the team. So we had to do more development, and we were more hands on with the kids. And I just wanted Coach to kind of spread some light, because I heard some people saying that they didn't like the fact that kids weren't being developed. I think people should be educated on. If you are looking to develop your kid, you probably should start at the lower levels, because, in my opinion, the AAU level is something where I'm not calling them completely finished products, but those are for more of the more talented kids. And if there's kids that need work, they probably need to start on those lower levels. I don't know if Coach wanted to speak to that or not, just based on like the different levels of traveling basketball in AAU.
Coach G, do you want to speak on that? Actually, I need to go to Burton and then I'll go to Mass because I skipped over Burton. Coach G,
You
you want
got
to respond?
Thanks.
yeah,
I
just oh, yeah, Burton, you can go ahead.
sorry. I'm pivoting a little bit of this conversation because I'm hearing the same theme over and over about the money, and I forgot who said it. Anytime big money's involved, you're bound to have corruption, and I agree with that sentiment. Um, but I also have a hard opinion that the money shouldn't be out of the game. I, in fact, think they should invest and infuse more money for more brands, not just the sneaker category. I just think they have to have more structure and infrastructure and how that money is spent. And I think that's the biggest problem. You have executives at Nike and Beaverton who don't have, who approve certain budgets and have no relationship with the people on the ground running things. And that's where corruption happens. When there's no oversight of where the money's actually going, there's no thought of it. All it is, hey, my guy that runs my grassroots department says we got to pay these 15 coaches. Okay, let's pay them and make sure they get their money. And I think that is, if Nike and Adidas and now Under Armour, who invests in grassroots, I think if they spent more time hiring middlemen and middlewomen to kind of manage the situation, I think we will get good product. I think we'll get less corruption. There'll always be some corruption. So, like, I have a very capitalistic approach to this. I think it's okay for these brands and these sneaker companies to invest in these programs as long as it's done the right way. So I know that's a little bit of a deviation of where the conversation was going. I just wanted to get that out there.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Coach D, you want to respond and to Jay, and then Mess, you want to hop in after him?
Yeah, there kind of is a false sense out there of there is no development in AAU. Again, because it's just so oversaturated. There's so many teams out there that there definitely are teams that aren't doing anything. Um, but just here in North Carolina, the different sneaker teams, not only do you have certain practice sessions throughout the week, but you also have strength and development training. You have different combine trainings that you do. Just with our organization alone, with me also being a high school coach, we're kind of year round player development kind of thing. So, on Saturdays, my gym is open for them to come shoot on the shooting gun or to come in and look at film, look at different things. So there's a false sense out there that there is no development. I think the problem now is the only thing that's highlighted is bad basketball. There's very few people that like to spread the good. It's like I always say, I feel like we as a society thrive off the negativity so we can trash talk and, you know, figure out what's wrong with the organization instead of showing the good things that happen. But there are a lot of different things that different organizations do throughout the year that showcase how much they are truly developing their players. Like Jay was saying, there are different levels. So there's NTBA, there's AAU, there's different independent associations. Then you have your shoe brand circuit, so to speak. Typically with your local, if you're still developing players, you would start off at like the NTBA level, playing in those level tournaments. Um, like he was saying, it's not necessarily a finished product, but if you're going to be on a Nike circuit, you've already showcased that you have something with you, whether it's your size or whether it's your skill. You're representing a brand there, so you're more of a polished prospect than some of those playing at different levels. So that's what you'll see for the most part with the different levels, whether it's NTBA, AAU, the independent circuits, and then the shoe circuits, to where as an overall product, you see the talent level increase at each level there. Um, and you kind of have to know as a parent what level your child can play at realistically and what's going to benefit them the most. Some people chase, hey, I want to play on the shoe circuit or I want to play Nike EYBL, and I'll be honest, everyone can't play Nike EYBL. That doesn't mean you're not good enough to play college. That doesn't even mean you're not good enough to play Division I basketball. Um, but there are different levels of basketball in the youth programs, and people chase names more than they chase and look at where they are realistically and what's going to benefit them to get what their goal should be is free college, you know.
Thank you. Jay, you came up for a reason, I know, Jay from BK. Let me go to Mess and then I'll come to you to see what you wanted to respond to. Go ahead, Mess.
Yeah. So quickly, I worked with Nike for a long, many years. Uh, they do a really good job of hiring local and having those local relationships with the community, right? And so when they do reach out and they do figure out the sponsorships, I think it's less like they don't know who it is, it's just budgeting, and more like they do know who it is. It's like they build relationships and they build friendships, and there's people they know, and so there's a little bit more, you're a little bit more lax versus if you were um, objective and you were like, okay, these 15 programs, like what are they doing? How are they benefiting us? Blah 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 blah. When you've known people for a while, like you're like, oh yeah, like we just run it back. Oh yeah, we got you, no problem, cool. So I think I think it's somewhere in the middle. Uh, Going back to your question about Europe, a lot of teams, so a lot of kids in Europe play for the clubs, right? So when you play on a team in a club, like think about it like varsity, JV, and then like varsity is like the men's team, right? Like the big team, right? So when I'm playing the varsity team. But then they have teams underneath of the club. So those kids are learning basically pro basketball at a young age because they're playing for the clubs, right? And so we exported basketball after 1992 with the Dream Team. After that, like coaches went over there, coaches taught these kids the fundamentals. College coaches went over there. You got college coaches doing a bunch of camps, getting paid for it, obviously. And so they learned the fundamentals of basketball. They teach the fundamentals of basketball because not everybody can jump out the gym. Not everybody can cross over crazy. Not everybody is fast, but you can throw a bounce pass, cut to the right spot, pivot, et cetera, et cetera. And so their development is different also because they have that mentality of like they've been in the pro system, right? And they've been learning from, they're watching the bigger club, they're getting that thought process. So like, let's think about it like, like Golden State, right? Golden State, their um, G League team does exactly what their NBA team does. So when those players play, they play the same. They run the same plays, run the same system, everything. So when they come up, they fit right in. So they're learning how to play in the NBA from the G League. It's exactly what they do overseas. These kids learn from a very young age how to play for the professional team, and now when they come across and they play college, they do, or they get to the NBA, they're really, really good. They're really, really skilled. I mean, it's no coincidence that Luka is dominating. It's no coincidence that Joker is dominating, and they ain't the fastest players. They're not the most athletic players. They learned their basketball IQ was crazy high because that's what they teach those kids. So I think for us, like there is a lot of development, but it gets masked because there is the need to win. There's a need to showcase these kids who you think are next. And when you're trying to, you don't necessarily always have that dedicated time to practice. So some teams have that, have a gym, they can practice all the time, and they are working them hard, and they getting the kids better. And some teams don't. Like my niece's team, like the parents boycotted the last 3 tournaments because they said, "Yo, like our girls have not practiced in a month, and your coaches, you guys are doing other things. You're not focused on our girls. There's nowhere we're gonna go to Spooky Nook because we're not gonna be prepared, and they're gonna look bad and be embarrassed." And so, I mean, and that takes a lot of you know, courage to band together and be like, "Yo, we're not going to put our girls out there to play because obviously this is where you get seen, you get showcased, you get ranked, all that stuff." But that's when parents have to also say, "What's the best for my kid? Is it about being developed? Is it about getting better? Or is it just about running out there and cross somebody over, get a reel, and then now I got a page, and now I'm a superstar, quote unquote."
Thank you, Mess. I appreciate you giving us that knowledge. Jay from BK, you jumped up here. What is there anything you wanted to respond to specifically? And then we'll go to T'Challa and Jay, the
No,
other two.
I got a phone call, so I didn't realize I was knocked down. That's why I came back up.
T'Challa, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I totally agree with what I heard from Coach Gene, and I think it might have been Jay, oh no, Burton. One of the things that's happened though on the college recruitment side is that coaches are coming to see teams they know that play a system. Most of travel basketball is no system at all. It's basically just a pickup game all day long. But a lot of college teams, and why some very good players are not recruited on a certain level of college team, D1 teams, is because they are not able to function on a 5-on-5 play in the system, being team disciplined to execute your role. AAU becomes a glorified one-on-one. It's my turn to come try to break your ankles. Let me pass it to you next time down. You try to do this highlight dunk, and they totally, don't learn things like how to move without the ball, how to be in a proper stance, they say defensively. Like the Princeton offense is not an easy offense to pick up, but it's an offense that almost all good college programs have a piece of it in. And a lot of players, well, I should say a lot of coaches on the AAU see travel part of it, don't teach those type of things. Um, so I think it goes back to what say Coach G is saying. When you see players from Europe come, they are coming from an academy. That academy has set things that they're going to work on and teach on. Set discipline things, practice times, and all that. And the more that you are organized, and the more that you are repetitive in your actions, is the better you get. Not just here and there, where people don't know what's happening one day to another. And again, is that it hurts the kids because you have some very good players that don't ever achieve their full potential because they are just in a bad situation, high school or AAU.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to Jay, and then I'll go to Coach W, and then Coach G.
Um, I just wanted to speak on, and I appreciate you having this space. I'm gonna jump out, but I think this space is great for people to be educated on AAU and just traveling basketball as a whole. I coached on a lower level of traveling basketball, nowhere near where Coach G is probably at, and some other people in here. But I just wanted people to know if there's anybody down there that has kids that do traveling ball or things like that. Not every kid, is a kid that's built for AAU, and I think Coach G touched on that. Once you get to the upper echelon of AAU, that's where the money gets dumped in, and you see a lot of the. I think T'Challa or somebody was touching on their kids not having practice and stuff like that. Once you get to the higher levels, you got the money and the backing in order to be able to, benefit from those types of things, and the sneakers and the bag, and the traveling fees being waived, and the hotels is on the house. And the level I was on more so was parents putting up the money, and we were putting it together to be able to pay for our tournaments, and people pretty much drove their kids there and stuff. And we played in a couple of major tournaments. We played in the King James Classic. We ended up playing against Team AI, Andre Iguodala's team, and they were suited and booted, and they came in on the traveling bus and all of that jazz. But I was just speaking to parents that want their kids to be able to play in the summer. If you want your kid to be able to play in the summer and develop on a lower level, you need to find a good coach and somebody that's willing and can have practices so your kid can develop. In my experience, the higher you go up, it gets tough, man. And a lot of these teams aren't practicing a lot unless you have those big sneaker companies behind them, and they're able to dump money into kids because they see potential there. So if your kid isn't on that level, don't just go run them to the biggest team you can find, because they're gonna get pushed to the end of the bench, and they're not gonna be developed. So try to find a team that's consistent where your kid can get some playing time under the whistle, and just kind of work with it through that angle. But I appreciate y'all having this space. It was dope. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. Coach G, then Coach W.
I just was gonna Coach White, who just came up, and Coach Payne. I was actually gonna ask those two if they wanted to come up. Um, I'll let both of them talk and kind of introduce themselves. But also, Brian King is the director for one of another program, the Pro Level Titans out of New York. That's a really solid program. We've played against them a few times. I didn't know if he wanted to come up and say anything either about travel ball.
Oh,
What
thank
part of
you.
New York? If you don't mind me interjecting, what part of New York are they in?
I'm not sure where he is in New York. He'd have to come up. His name is Brian King, though. They're the Pro Level Titans.
Thank you. Coach W, you can come, you introduce yourself and speak your piece.
What's going on, everybody? Yeah, I coach EYBL with Skills Factory out of Atlanta, and also coach high school basketball on NIBC with Legacy. Just kind of, I kind of hear late, so I kind of heard some different things. But I heard the last guy kind of talking about, the practicings, and obviously being with certain programs, you want the player development, the skill development, and as me being a AAU coach and a high school coach, I think when it comes to the development piece, I feel like it's more on the high school side because you got the kids longer. AAU is generally based for players to get exposure. Um, so I kind of feel like, development piece, you should be looking at that as far as high school coaches, school he goes to, and things of that nature. And then he gets a little bit at also during the summertime when he's playing. So I feel like that falls more on the schools than more than AAU coaches. Because you hear that a lot where a lot of people say, well, you got to be at the AAU pro when he can develop and things of that nature. But I think that falls on the high school.
Thank you, Coach White. I keep saying Coach W because you come across as all I see is Coach W. So apologies about that.
No, you're fine.
Uh, so, you know, Burton, do you want to hop in here and talk about, what you see in terms of with the colleges and anything else with traveling ball that we talked about tonight outside of the corruptness and the money getting involved? Anything else you want to add here? I want to make sure I get the professional on the other side of it from where everyone else is. And then I'll go to William.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm not as fully ingrained as some of these coaches on this spaces to know the exact nuance process and how some kids get overlooked and how some kids get overhyped. A lot of these.
Oh no, I don't mean from that lens. I mean from your lens, things you may want to point out from your lens.
Yeah. What I was gonna say was, obviously all of these major programs and even some of the mid-level programs have sneaker deals, and therefore they work with certain sneaker sponsored AAU programs or travel programs, we want to call it. So there's like that pipeline. So I can see how someone gets overhyped and how someone gets overlooked. I would just echo the same thing. I think that although the system is corrupt and it is leading to some long-term bad effects, I just would encourage, and I have these conversations mostly with executives at Adidas because they seem to be more open to hear this. Like, I would encourage those companies to reinvest into this grassroots market, because even the kid that doesn't play in the NBA buys a pair of sneakers for his whole life because he's playing ball until he's 35 years old. So, like, it doesn't hurt you to reinvest in these kids. It doesn't hurt you to invest in the right way, the way the European markets are, where they really care about the game, because it ends up being a better product for all of us. So I would just echo that, and I would also say I got to run. I had a hard stop at 9, so appreciate the invite. I thought this was a well articulated, spirited conversation.
Yeah, Burton, I appreciate it. Coach W, you want to hop in? Coach
Yeah,
White.
now,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I also want to say too, when it comes to the sponsor teams, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. I mean, I know we was talking about practicing as well. Like, you probably only get 2 practices a week on the shoe level. I've ran my own independent program and coached, and I feel like with the independent team, you actually have a chance to get more practice and be able to skill develop with those guys. But on the shoe level, it is super hard to practice because you got kids coming from all different places and things of that nature. So I think the independent side, especially if you're looking for your kid to get the skill development, become a better player. The independent might be a little bit better way just due to him being able to get in the gym with those coaches more periodically.
Hey, Buzz, let me just add into that, Malika, because I have actually gone and coached against Coach White. He'll probably remembers the name Oakbrook Prep. Um, in South Carolina, and I can say this because I know of his reputation. He has touched a few players who have been on the pro level, and plus the Legacy program is a very excellent program. Not only about the players, but it's about the education that those kids are getting. So the grassroots of basketball, which the school was sort of founded on, was about making sure that the education part of it was also there. So he has done a lot of great work, and I just want to give him, just a little bit of his flowers. Say, Coach White.
I appreciate that big time, definitely.
Thank you. William, you came on up. Anything you want to add into this AAU conversation? I know you took part in some of our JUCO talks, so definitely hop in here.
Yes, ma'am. First, I want to. Coach White's a friend of mine. We do spaces together, and I want to give him credit. He does things in every facet the right way. Um, he's a really good resource when it comes to travel basketball. And one thing, this may sound silly, but one thing I like to kind of focus on is not calling it AAU. And I know that somebody kind of touched on that a minute ago. I've started referring to it as travel basketball because that's more of an all-encompassing type of language. And the reason that matters is because these different associations are starkly different. Starkly different. There can be massive variations in how they operate, how they're funded, the outcome, the purpose. And so by calling it travel basketball, it's a little more encompassing. It just makes a little more sense in today's game.
Well, William, can I say real quick also while you're and you can jump right in? I just wanted to put this in here real quick. Then I think NBA coaches and players that comment on quote unquote AAU should be more
They
distinct
should.
because
Oh,
when
100%
when
they
they
should.
make these comments,
100% they should.
they're
Yes,
they're indicting the
they are.
whole. When people hear AAU, they think, well, me, I'm not as familiar with it. I'm becoming more educated thanks to this space. Sometimes I hold these spaces to educate
Yeah.
myself.
The vast yeah.
You
the
generalize, but go
the
ahead.
vast majority of what we are talking about is not AAU basketball. And it's really important to say that. So, like, the vast majority of the people in this room, the vast majority of the coaches that are coached are not coaching AAU basketball. So that is important to know, and it's important to know because AAU does get the bad rap, and that's one of the better organizations out there. And so that language does matter. But we've ran some really in-depth spaces on this topic. We had one about 8-9 months ago that was so big it literally broke. We had thousands and thousands of people in the space, and that space was. I think you were in that one, Coach White, when we were talking about the expenditures of independent programs and how
Yeah.
much it costs to run an independent program. Because one of the things, and for those of you that don't know me in the room, um, it's really rare that I would ever say anything like I'm getting ready to say, but I will say it. And Coach White, a few other people in the room can kind of vouch for what I'm getting ready to say. When it comes to the game of college recruiting, there are people that will tell you I'm one of the experts in the country. Like that when it specifically when it comes to the small college level and whatnot. And so I say that only to say this: there's so many in-depth ways you can take this conversation, and so many things. I love what you're doing. I think it is phenomenal. The only thing I would encourage you to do is to continue to do it and break it down into different avenues. Because
Oh, I plan
when
to. Yep.
we did ours, and it was so good when we talked about the financing of independent teams. And because one of the things you often hear is, oh, it costs so much and it's a money grab, right? That's the thing you hear all the time. And so I brought on some of the. I live in Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. I brought on some of the good local programs that run independently here, and they all voluntarily shared their expenditures and why they charge what they charge and what they spend their money on, and even opened up their actual books via pictures that I posted at the top for everybody to see. And so there's just so many intricacies when it comes to this topic, that all I really wanted to say, I've been kind of long-winded, was I really would love to be a part of it and listen. I think that what you're doing is great. I hopped in late, so a lot of things that were said I probably missed. But it's a really great topic, and one that most people actually don't know a lot about. We've done topics in the AAU ranging, like I said, finances, the purpose. Um, we've broken down the different scenes, the shoe circuits, the largest tournaments in the country. Some of the little research studies I've done. I've got a hilarious little thing I did at the largest tournament in the country. I was coaching in college ball in Ohio, and I was at the Best of the South. It was in 2019, I think, and that was the best. That was the largest tournament in the country that year. And I did a really just kind of a quick little gauge on what coaches felt about their players. And it's kind of lengthy, so I won't go into it tonight. But the next time you do one, I'll share it with the room, and I hope it's really enlightening in terms of the AAU scene in general, the travel ball scene in general. But yeah, I think you're doing a great job. I won't go into any of the avenues too deeply, but you're doing great. Please don't stop it. Keep sharing it. Like I said, that's the only advice I give you, is don't stop doing it, because a lot of people need to be educated. They don't know what goes on behind the scenes with some of this stuff, but by and large, the good outweighs the bad. I don't care what anybody says with this. A lot of these people are coming out of their own pockets. They're trying to give these young people an opportunity to try to get them seen. Yes, there are a lot of people who are doing it wrong, but far and away, most of these travel ball coaches are in it for the right reasons. They're trying to give these young people not only a chance to get seen to go to college, but to keep them off the streets, to give them something positive to do, to teach them camaraderie and team. There's just a lot of positive stuff with it. So all in all, I really am a fan of what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. I'm going to have some of these chats like at least once a month where we look at a different topic within JUCO and AAU. So that's the goal. And that's what my focus is. I'm even going to do a podcast series on traveling ball.
If I can
So
ever help you at all, please. I was a college. I've actually won a championship as a head coach at the college level. I was a JUCO coach for years. I've coached across. I'm an athletic director now, but if I can do anything, if I can be a resource for you, it doesn't matter. If you just need to pick my brain, whatever you need, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, and I'll help you any way I can.
I appreciate that, and I will reach out. A mess, go ahead, and I think I'm gonna close soon because our next month I wanted to branch off into another topic regarding this. But mess, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've touched on a lot of topics on what makes AAU so terrible. But I think
Yeah, I
you know,
and yeah. So go
yeah,
ahead. I
I
think
think
I
yeah,
that's my fault. I set it up the wrong way. But go ahead.
nah, it's. I just want to just kind of talk about some of the things that you know, as young black kids in New York City, you know, having organizations that take them out of Brooklyn, out of the Bronx, out of the city, and get them the kids to see a different part of the world. Uh, it just changes their perspective on life, and having and being able to meet people from different walks of life as well, because you're playing in a tournament in North Carolina or you're in California and you've traveled across the country like that. That's really impactful, right? And we kind of gloss over it because you know the volume of travel, quote traveling ball, but it really does. You form, you meet you make friends, you form bonds. Like we talk about the Banana Boat crew, right? Braun, Melo, CP3, and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. But guess what? They all met each other playing AAU ball, right? Like Booker, uh, who else? Tatum, all them cats. They met each other playing at Nike's, EY ball, right? And they became friends. And as they became friends and they became competitive, they all drove each other to get to the next level. And they played with each other in college, and then they played with each other in the NBA. And so, like, the thing and that's what I really want to highlight is that you make friends and you meet people, and now you make friends who and meet people who are like minded as you, particularly in sport and particularly in basketball. And we may not live next door to each other, but if we live across the country from each other, we can still be in touch and be friends. And again, this digital age is easier. So I just wanted to highlight that part. It's just saying again, the travel, the exposure to different world, the different outlook on life, and then making friends and meeting people that you may never have met because you're playing basketball on the circuits.
That's one of the things I wanted. That's actually one of the things I wanted to highlight before I started researching. I was like, there's a lot here. I need to actually break this up a bit. That's one of the things that I wanted to look into and talk about a little bit. And we'll do that a little later, like another time. Is one of the comments and like one of the you know criticisms is everybody is friends in the NBA. Like their people are too friendly, they're not as competitive because they're friends, and that edge isn't there. And I think that's being misinterpreted, and it's like indicting, like, because of AAU, that's why this is happening. So I wanted to look at that, but that's going to be down the line because there are much more things to talk about before we talk about that part of it. Because I'm going to have another space on this next month on AAU, talking about another topic. And we're going to close down soon. So any last comments?
Can I,
Say it
Malika?
now. You have 60 seconds each, and then we will phase out. I see Jay, you trying to come up. You'll come up and you'll have one comment.
Malika, really quickly. So
Yeah.
the counter to that is that when it was 5 star, when it was Street Smiths, when it was, you know, all those tournaments, like all those kids, everybody played together as well back then. Everyone was friends back then, and everyone was just as competitive. You wanted to be ranked ahead of your friends. So it's no different than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's just that now, because you've actually made it to the league. Like a lot of guys made it to the league as friends, and a lot of guys. I mean, look, Jordan and Ewing and Barkley, they fought each other every single time on the court, and then they was playing cards and playing golf and smoking and drinking afterwards. It's no different.
Yeah, that's how I see it, actually. That's how I see it. Like back then they were more, they didn't have social media and all of that. So you didn't know that some of these guys were friends and hung out behind the scenes. You just didn't know that because we didn't have social media. So it looks like, oh, they weren't really friends. They just went out there and competed and blah 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 blah. When the picture isn't always green on the other side. So we'll go to Jay. You give your one comment and then we'll go to Chris, and then we'll close on out. And next month we'll have another space on AAU on another topic regarding AAU. This is really just an introduction, really, but we'll go deeper next month. Go ahead, Jay.
Hey, Malika, I appreciate the space. I appreciate everybody that came in and participated. I learned a lot. I just wanted to speak to the part that I did know about, which is this false narrative of guys being friends because, like Mess said, I mean, you had Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas kissing each other on the jaw before a finals tip off. And then the other thing is, they say, as a criticism of Bron's generation, oh, they're too friendly, this, that, and the other. But then there's no love for Giannis because Giannis isn't buddy buddy. Giannis just wants to do his work, bust your head, go
He's
home.
just with his brothers. That's it. And his
Yeah,
teammates.
yeah,
Like that's it.
yeah, yeah. And then Ja and the Grizzlies talk noise and this, that, and the other, and they don't like that, right? And so I think that this buddy buddy thing was a construct of an argument specifically to show why Braun wasn't as good as Jordan, because that's kind of when it entered the discourse. And that's really the only reference point of it. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody says that Steph isn't a killer because he doesn't scowl, like he plays with a smile most of the time. Nobody says that Luca, smiles too much. You know what I'm saying? I think that this whole thing of AAU makes guys too buddy buddy um, is just. I think I always thought it was a dumb argument because the NBA is giving out life changing money. So it doesn't matter that I'm friends with you. If I gotta cross you up and embarrass you to get a $50 million contract, then love or no love, like or no like, whether I know your mama or not, you gotta get this work. And that's the part that I don't think people understand or respect or appreciate is that relationships are relationships. Like Matt said, like these guys have known each other since 8, 10, 12 years old. Yeah, they friends because these are guys that only two elite prospects understand what it's like to have to choose, am I going to go to prom or am I going to go to this 3 hour camp thing that like Kobe is having or Tracy McGrady is having? Am I going to go hang out at the beach with my friends or am I going to go to this travel ball tournament? Like only the elite prospects really understand that pressure, like what shoe
The
contract, what
sacrifices.
coach, what
Hmm.
sacrifices. Yeah. And so it's
You
all
got
that's
30
necessary.
seconds.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But yeah, all that's necessary, man. And I just wanted to point out that even the guys who ain't quote unquote buddy buddy in the league, they got a problem with them players too, man. So I always thought that was a false argument. And that's it.
No, I agree. Chris, anything you wanted to say here? We're about to close out, but next month I'll be having another space on AAU.
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to say, I think specifically kind of geared towards Steve Kerr's comments, I think that people kind of discount the level of coaching that's in these top AAU circuits. Like I spent the summer with Team Loaded a couple years ago back in 2017, and I can't even count how many current pros that I saw play that summer. I'm talking about Zion Williamson, Emmanuel Quickly, even high major dudes like both of the centers that just started in the national championship game, Dave McCormick and Armando Bacote. So you're not gonna roll into a league like that and just think that you're just gonna have dudes go out here and play and they're not being coached and they're not being taught the game. Like it just don't work like that. Like everybody has players. So if you're gonna win at that level and as a player, if you're gonna be successful at that level, then you're gonna have to have good coaches that's teaching them the game. So I think that's one thing that kind of gets lost in this whole thing. And even on the non-sneaker circuits, like when you look at some of these independent teams that don't have the sponsorships, now you really got to get the coaching if you even want to hang with these teams. So I think that kind of gets a little lost in translation. Like, we kind of say it's more important in high school, but high school you get better coaching. It's not necessarily the case because a lot of times in high school, the high school coach is like a math teacher or something like that. So I think that's just something that kind of gets lost in this whole debate.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Did did you want to say anything as a final comment on our space this evening? Jay from PK?
I was gonna say it's like 15 J's up here.
I know. Go ahead.
Nah, I just appreciate what everybody said tonight. I look forward to what's happening moving forward. If you know of any summer camps, and please note in Brooklyn and the surrounding parks, our summer vacation does not start right after Memorial Day like it does in the South. So we off July and August. all of July, all of August. We don't go back till after Labor Day. If you know of any camps, please reach out to me. My sons, we travel, and we'll go wherever. This summer, I'm pretty sure we're gonna go to Nick Claxton's camp in South Carolina, but we'll go wherever. It does not matter, and I
Thank you.
appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Jay from BK. Go ahead, Coach G.
Yeah, I just really want to get up and say I appreciate you putting this space on. I appreciate everybody getting up here speaking from their perspectives. I definitely like to be a part of it moving forward with me
Yep.
being a high school coach as well as travel ball. I see both sides. I hear the arguments on both sides. Um, but I think one thing that someone brought up just a few minutes ago is what gets overlooked with travel ball is some of the experiences these guys get. Like we flew out to New Orleans for the Final Four last year, and I had three players that was their first time on an airplane. And so we went to Vegas last year, and kids, who knows if they'll ever get that opportunity again in their life. So I think there are a lot of different things that basketball as a whole can benefit kids in their life, just with experiences that we kind of just overlook, and we look for the negative in things. But like someone said, there is a lot of positives out there. We just have to spread the good as much as we showcase the bad, kind of thing. But I definitely appreciate you putting this space on.
Thank you. And I'll reach out for future spaces on these type of topics for your participation. JF Cake, anything you want to say to close us out?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Malika, for hosting this. I think this is very important for just understanding how to move forward with dealing with kids. Like a couple people are strayed away from the concept of what AAU basketball, but I think it's a phenomenal thing to have because remember, you have 12 to 15 guys on every team, and not everybody's going to make the high school basketball team. So you don't know who is out there that hasn't really shown it, but if they develop, and get proper training then AAU and travel basketball is always there to help. You get what I'm saying? I just think when it comes down to it, all these good men that are coaches and are leading these kids, I hope you continue this because there are some sharks out there, and we all know it. I'm a football coach, so I see it all the time. So I really love AAU for what it does, like what people were talking about. Because remember, I played on the AAU team or a travel team. I'm not even sure what it was. I think it was a travel team more than the AAU team when I think about it. But I was on the B team, even being on the B team, like you're still being able to develop. Like there's still people there for you, and you get to see a lot of people. You get to see like get more exposed to basketball, like people are saying, because kids aren't exposed nowadays. Especially after this whole COVID situation, like we got to get these kids out there. We got to get them away from just pasted on their phones and social media, and actually have them enjoying basketball and what it has to offer. So, I would just say this finally: if there's any coaches in here, please use social media to your advantage to find some kids that probably won't even get noticed on a regular level. But I think this is just a great opportunity to expose everybody. And if you guys do love basketball talk, definitely Malika has the Rewind Pod, and you can also check out Hoot Spaces on Amazon AMP. I know Chris would want me to say that for him. But
Yep.
appreciate you, Malika.
Hoop Spaces 10-1 on AMP. He talks about the previous night's games, college and pro, and we get into some details because me and GFK and Sean with the W, we're usually in there. But I just want to say thanks for coming out. I am going to have a space next Tuesday, and I'm thinking of doing just a toxic space because I got into a discussion last night with a fellow Nets fan about his vision of who the best player of all time is. I'm not going to do the best player of all time. I think I want to talk about top fives and people be able to defend their top five. Like why do you have this top five? Why are these specific five on your list? And have you come and let's just get into it and talk about it. A toxic old school clubhouse space because that's what they should do all day on Clubhouse. Like have a room open all day talking about the same thing. This time it's not going to be open all night. It's going to be structured a particular way because I have but so much patience. We're going to talk about top five. Next Tuesday, bring your top five. Why they're your top five? Have your stats right. Have any visual evidence you want to put on the jumbotron ready, and we're gonna get into it because I really, I really want to understand why people have certain people in their top fives. Um, I don't think any the top five has to be universal. My top five would be different than yours, but I just want to understand yours, and I will break down mine as well and why. I'm also going to have a space soon talk about the latest Bill Russell documentary that's on Netflix. That needs to be discussed. If you want to listen back to the space I did on Mahmoud Abdul Rauf's book and his doc, I will retweet that in a few minutes, and the actual YouTube version of the conversation will be out tomorrow. And I have other spaces coming. More AAU spaces are coming. I am planning a JUCO women's space soon, so check me out with that. And I actually also want to have another space and research it. Me and Sean are planning a space looking at the Kristaps Porzingis trade from the Knicks and the Mavericks perspective, um, and how it benefited and hurt both franchises. I'm planning a space looking at historical nets. I want to go back and look at the Dr. J time, but in more detail, because why not? He is part of the history and the Derek Coleman time. I just feel like Derek Coleman didn't rise to his potential while he was with us. So I have a different opinion of him than some others. But we're going to look into that. And we're also going to continue the series and looking at each team and a moment in time of each team. The Toronto Raptors picked, I got to look at what they picked, but they picked a moment in time for their team. They picked the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry time. I was surprised they didn't pick Vince Carter another time, but we're going to look into that with them. So I have other spaces all over the place coming, and I have a podcast coming soon. So definitely check me out. But next week is the toxic top five conversation. Let's just have fun with it. So bring your top five and let's get it on. See you later, guys.